Sometimes I fall to my knees and pray. Come, Jesus, come. Let today be the day. And sometimes I feel like I'm gonna break, but I'm holding on to a hope that won't fade. Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you right now. Come and turn this around. Deep down I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. There'll be no war, and there'll be no chains when Jesus comes. Let today be the day. He'll come for the weak and the strong just the same, and all will believe in the power of His name. Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you right now. Come and turn this around. Deep down I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. One day He'll come, and we'll stand face to face. Come and lay it all down. Doesn't bind me today. The time is right now. There's no need to wait. Your past will be washed by rivers of grace. Come, Jesus, come. We've been waiting so long for the day you return to heal every hurt and right every wrong. We need you right now. Come and turn this around. Deep down I know this world isn't home. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Come, Jesus, come. Please be seated. I just want to repeat what was said in our welcome to everybody. If you're a guest with us especially, we're so glad you're here. If you're a guest and have no clue what's going on today and why, like you just happen to stop by the Stantonville Church of Christ today, there might be somebody like that. sorry is not the right word. Like, this is a big day at Freed Hardeman, or yesterday was a big day at Freed Hardeman, and so that's why there's so many people here. We're glad that you're here. So if you just happen to stop in today, this is a little crazier than normal in here today. If you're a Freed Hardeman family, wow, thank you for being here. Thank you for sending your kids to Freed Hardeman, and we're thankful just to play a small part down here at Stantonville in their time here at Freed Hardeman, and hopefully help them and serve them in some way. So just great to see you guys. Glad you're here this weekend. I want to share with you a little bit of my journey, and I think it's a journey that some of you have been on before, and maybe especially some of the men, and that's my journey with a fascination of televisions. That's not where you thought that was going, was it? So I was born at the very front end of the 1980s, so when I grew up in the 80s, we were past black and white TVs. I know that several of you grew up on black and white TVs. But they were still around in the 80s. They ended up in garages and basements, and I think my grandma had one in her kitchen, like that extra TV, like especially if you've been around the block and had a black and white TV, you kept it and you put it in that extra space. Now, black and white TVs were not very clear. You did the best you could, but you couldn't see things very clearly. I remember when I was in high school, I got for Christmas one year this bad boy. A 5-inch battery-operated black and white TV that I could carry with me anywhere we went because it was battery-operated and had that little antenna on top. Now, you know that we were from the hills of West Virginia, which means we couldn't pick up any stations at our house with this thing, I don't think. Maybe one or two if we were lucky. But I remember when we would travel, I would carry this thing with me, and I'd sit it on my lap in the car, and we'd go through a big city, and all of a sudden I'd get 5 or 6 channels on this station. And man, it was so fun. I remember on Thanksgiving travels, like watching football on this 5-inch black and white TV. I did ask my parents if we still had this, and we do not still have it. Who knows if any of these are still around. But some of you know what it's like to watch black and white TV. But I really remember growing up on TVs about like this. The 80s and 90s, it looked something like this. It was a color television, a square for the most part, and this was a little clearer than the black and white TV. I spent a lot of time in the 80s and 90s watching TGIF, Saved by the Bell, and I remember especially coming home every day and watching SportsCenter on a TV that looked something like this. So this was a pretty good TV. This is about what things looked like when I went to college, but things were changing. And so I remember, I think it was my junior year of college, that I did not have a girlfriend at the time, which meant I had extra money. Just a tip, gentlemen. And so I went to the Sears in the Jackson Mall, and I went in there and I bought, with this little bit of extra money that I had, a 25-inch TV. And it was shaped like this, except they were just starting to come out with screens that were completely flat. You remember these were kind of curved. It was a flat screen. So it wasn't widescreen, but it was flat, and man, it was nice. And so in the dorm room, I had the coolest TV in Brigant's dorm. People would come to my room to play Madden on the Sega Genesis. Yeah, because it was that long ago. And so this is kind of what I remember growing up on and spending a lot of time with. So I brought that 25-inch flat screen TV into our marriage. And so when we got married, we had we were satisfied with that TV, right? It was a good TV. And at some point, I think it was probably 2006, something like that, we were good friends with Bart and Laura Warren. He was the preacher over at the Antioch Church on the other side of the county. And so every month or so, we'd get together with them. And there was one time I remember we went over to their house, and he had a new TV. And I'd never seen one before. It was an HD TV. Something like that. And I remember the picture was so clear, I'd never seen anything like it. And he said, "Wait a second, Matt, watch this." And he hit some buttons, and he had purchased MLB.TV so that he could watch the Texas Rangers, but he pulled up my Pittsburgh Pirates all the way down here in Tennessee on some random night on this crystal clear HD TV, and I was amazed. I'd never seen anything like it before. So what do you think I did? We waited a month or so till it was about Christmas time, and we didn't have kids yet, so our Christmas present to each other that year was a 37-inch, we went to Walmart, Selmer Walmart, a 37-inch Vizio flat screen HD TV. And man, it was great. Talk about some sports on that thing. It was awesome. We loved it. And so not long after that, then we moved to Peru. We couldn't bring this with us, so we left it in storage. In Peru, it was more expensive, so we kind of had to downsize a little bit. But when we got back from Peru, we had saved this thing. It was in storage. So I remember taking it out of storage, and we were completely satisfied with this great 37-inch TV. Until I went to my brother-in-law's house. And he had one of those new, even bigger TVs. It was 50 inches plus. It was 4K Ultra HD TV. This was about 10 years ago, probably 2015 or 2016. And he was like, man, these aren't as expensive as you think. And so that year for Christmas, about 10 years after we bought the first one, we went out and bought one of these. And man, it was so cool. And about 4 or 5 months ago, it started glitching a little bit. And it had been 10 years, right? So we went to Best Buy. And now they're beyond 4K UHD TVs, and now it's QLED and OLED and all of this crazy stuff. And so for Christmas, for ourselves this year, we got one of the big ones. Get this, for cheaper than we had paid for that 37-inch Vizio TV 20 years ago. It's the one thing I suppose inflation hasn't touched. And man, on this, the picture is crystal clear, isn't it? I mean, you can see more than you want to see. I mean, it's so detailed and so crystal clear, and it's just beautiful. And that's a little bit of my story when it comes to my journey with televisions. Now, there's a couple of things that I've noticed as I think about my journey with televisions. Number one, it's amazing how much clarity has improved over the years, over my lifetime. It's amazing, isn't it? When I was in the late 80s, there was a Muppets Christmas special that we loved. It was on TV one year, and it was when they go to Fozzie's house, or Fozzie's mom's house for Christmas. It's a rare one. And it was on TV that year, and for some reason, we videotaped it. Kids, I know you don't know what that means, but we recorded it on our VCR and saved it and watched it every year. And so several years ago, my brother put it on a DVD for us. And so every year I make my kids watch this thing. Now, I think it was probably several years ago when they were smaller, we were watching this and they looked at me and they said, "Dad, fix the TV. Fix it. What's wrong with the TV?" And I said, "Oh, children, this is what it was like when I was a child." And then occasionally we'll pull up some sports highlights on YouTube from the 90s and even the 2000s like this one. And I think, how did we watch that? Like, how did we watch a football game when it looked like that? It's amazing how much the clarity has improved over the years. That's the first thing I think about when I think about this journey. The second thing I realize is I often, or at least the 3 or 4 times that I've done this in the past since I've become an adult, since I bought TVs, it was often spurred on by the fact that I saw someone else that had a clearer TV than I had. And I thought, oh, I want that. And it was because somebody else had it. They say, "Matt, what in the world does this have to do with church or a sermon?" Here's what I think it has to do with this. I think relationships are a lot like the different levels of clarity in a TV. I think about very surface level relationships like a black and white TV. You can't see very clearly. Maybe these are the relationships with people that you barely know. You see them at the ball field, or you interact with them just a little bit at a store or a restaurant. Maybe you know their name, but probably not. You may know very little about them. It's a black and white relationship. But maybe a 90s square color TV is a relationship where you have a little bit more. You know their name, you know a little bit about their family, you can talk a little bit about the things that you're interested in. Maybe this is the kind of relationship that's kind of normal in our lives. These are friends, not close friends, but friends. And then I think about an old 2000s HD TV. And that's a relationship that's a little higher clarity. You know more about that person. You know some details and some intimate details about that person's life. This is a close friend. This is family. But then I think about modern TVs, the QLED, where every detail is seen. It's very intimate. You can see everything. And I think about those sorts of relationships and realize that those are very rare. Unfortunately, even in marriages, sometimes a QLED relationship doesn't exist. And I wonder sometimes in our church relationships where most of our relationships fall into the category of the clarity of these TVs. And I wish I could say, you know what, there's a whole bunch, for most Christians, I know we've got people from all over the place here today. For most Christians, man, there's just a whole bunch of at least HD, high definition relationships. And maybe if QLED is just that really tight circle or family. But I'm afraid that for a lot of us, we settle for 90s color television clarity relationships. And I think in some cases, for a lot of church folks who just think, I'm just going to show up, I'm just going to kind of go through the motions and I love to worship, but I don't really need to interact. I think for a lot of folks, they're satisfied with a black and white relationship. Now, here's the problem with that. In a world with QLED, nobody settles for a black and white TV. I know there might be one or two of you, old school folks, but for most of us, you don't settle for something that low definition when something so high definition is available. But when it comes to relationships and Christian relationships, I'm afraid sometimes we settle for black and white or colors 90 when there's something far better available to us. And the problem is, we know it's available. You know how I said sometimes I wanted a better TV because I saw somebody else with it? You ever see somebody who has some really tight, intimate Christian relationships and you think, wow, I wish I had that. Boy, wouldn't it be great? Like, I can see that that's possible. I wish I had that. And then we still settle for something that's not like that. We settle for a black and white or maybe a 90s color TV. Why do we settle to not have high definition relationships, especially I'm talking about our Christian family relationships? Why do we settle? There may be several reasons. Real quickly, one of the reasons is maybe we've been burnt. Maybe you had a close relationship with somebody and then you found out that they had shared details about your life or they had gossiped about you or maybe you trusted them and they were a hypocrite. Maybe for some folks, Satan fools us into thinking we don't need these. We got this figured out. I don't need a tight I don't want to share details with people, that's for sure. That's too intimate, that's too vulnerable. So Satan fools us into thinking we don't need them. Similarly, it's just pride. Because, most of us are from the American South or the rural South where we kind of pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and we figure things out on our own. I don't need this. Maybe for some it's fear of vulnerability. We're scared what people will think if we actually share all the details. Maybe it's just because we're too busy and distracted and we don't have time for this kind of relationship. Why talk about high definition relationships? Turn your Bibles over to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The passage that was read during our scripture reading is the famous part. You've heard it before, and it sounds like a Hallmark card. It's pretty. You can quilt it or put it on a sign. Some of you may even have a plaque or a picture in your house that has the words of Ecclesiastes 4, 9 to 12 on it. Those are beautiful words, but Ecclesiastes is not a Hallmark card. In fact, it's sort of the opposite, and it's rather depressing. Here's the summary. You've got this guy who is trying to find meaning in life, and he tries everything. He tries money and sex and work and education and wisdom, and at the end of the day, his conclusion is meaning can only be found in relationship and in obedience to God. That's the summary of it. But as he walks us through this story, it ends on a positive note, but it's rather depressing all the way through, and he says everything's meaningless. And in chapter 4, before this passage that we like to pull out of context and quote as some nice Hallmark type sort of Christianity, I want you to hear the context of these famous words. Go back to chapter 4, verse 1. Again, I saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun, and behold, the tears of the oppressed, And they had, I want you to circle this or at least pay attention to this word, they had no one to comfort them. On the side of their oppressors, there was power, and there was no one to comfort them. So you've got people who are oppressed and alone. You skip to verse 4. Then I saw that all toil and all skill and work came from a man's envy of his neighbor. This is also vanity and striving after wind, so you've got envy. Skip down to verse 7. Again, I saw vanity under the sun. One person who has, here it is again, has no other, either son or brother, yet there is no end to all his toil, and his eyes are never satisfied with riches, so that he never asks, for whom am I toiling or depriving myself of pleasure? This also is vanity and unhappy business. Here's the summary of verses 1 through 8. It's a man who works really hard, envies other, is ambitious and highly successful, and he's got nobody. Think that describes any men in our culture? Or any men and women in our culture? Successful. They got money. They're ambitious. And at least 3 times in this passage, this person is described as having nobody. And into that, Ecclesiastes speaks these famous words. Verse 9. 2 are better than 1. Why? Because they have a good reward for their toil. He's going to give us several illustrations as to why 2 are better than 1. And he starts with a financial one. If you own a business, if you're working with other people, if you're by yourself, you can accomplish some stuff. But if you hire the right person to help you, you can make more money. Now, I know that we've got some kind of private contractors in our church, and they do great work by themselves and have decided maybe I can do this better without somebody else. But in some cases, at least, if you've got more help, you can be more productive and make more money. He continues, verse 10. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. You don't want to get into a bad spot physically when you're by yourself. You don't want to, well, I mean, you remember the old commercials, I've fallen and I can't get up, speaking of old television stuff. And so they created these little buttons you could push and call for help. Nobody, and some of you live in situations maybe where you're by yourself and you do fear, rightly so. What happens if I fall and I've got nobody to help me up? This is going to sound silly, but one of my fears is to be out at the Chickasaw Golf Course by myself, which is rare. Usually Connor's with me. Mid-South, when they're at Mid-South Youth Camp, that's when I go golf by myself for a minute. And one of my fears is that I'm in the woods looking for free golf balls, because when you stink at golf, the only thing redemptive is finding free golf balls. And so I'm out in the woods and I get bit by a water moccasin. And I'm in the woods and I'm by myself. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but that genuinely is like one of the things I think about. What am I going to do? Because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pass out. And then what do I do? After this happens, nobody wants to be in trouble, to get in a situation like that and be by yourself. For that reason, 2 are better than 1. Look at verse 11. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm, but how can one keep warm alone? Now, 2 things. This is not about sex, and this is not about marriage. This is likely about these 2 co-workers who are in the wilderness or the desert where it gets really cold at night. They're traveling, and their lives are at stake. And if my life is at stake, even if I don't want to snuggle with Danny Strickland, like, I'd snuggle with the guy, right? Because you do what you got to do when survival is at stake. And that's the language here, right? Someone could die if we don't keep warm together. But he's not done. Verse 12, and though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. If I get attacked, I hope, I've never been attacked before. Let's say somebody attacks me, I hope that I'm not alone. It's common sense, isn't it? If somebody attacks you, you want your buddies around, you want your friends around, so that you've got a better chance of fighting back and surviving this conflict. You see, the language here is not the language of golfing buddies or hunting buddies or shopping friends. The language here is language of survival. If you don't have people with you in these sorts of moments, you won't survive. And so he concludes, like this, verse 12. And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. The illustration here from the ancient world is when they would either fight wars and have certain weaponry, or when they were trying to uphold a structure, they would braid the rope to make it stronger. Again, pretty common sense. Why? Because in war and when structures are about to fall, survival is at stake. So the language here and the illustrations given are to remind us that we will not survive, especially spiritually, in other areas of life as well. We will not survive if we try to do it on our own. In other words, the simple lesson from this passage is this: we need deep relationships. Now, I know that this is really, really basic, but we're walking through the Gospel of John the rest of the year, but on Making Music Sunday, I try to do something a little different. And I think about all of the people who are here this weekend from other places that have come back because of relationships, because of deep relationships. Some of the parents of some of our students, you experienced what your students are experiencing right now. You experienced those deep relationships. For our current college students, one of the reasons you love your experience at Freed-Hardeman are those deep relationships. Here's the problem. It's easier to have a deep relationship when you're living in a dorm with other people. But when real life starts and you're kind of scattered, and maybe you had those relationships in college or in the youth group, it's a lot harder to have these when you're living daily life and you're only spending 3 or 4 hours a week together in a setting like this. And I want to remind you, no matter where you're from, what your church context is, where you live, we need deep relationships, and we will not survive spiritually without them. The illustration of this, if Ecclesiastes teaches us of our need, the book of Acts demonstrates this. Just one quick passage. Turn to Acts chapter 2. Again, famous words describing the earliest days of the church. Now remember that you've got, on the day of Pentecost, people from all over the Mediterranean world, Jews from all over who've come to Jerusalem to celebrate this festival, and 3,000 of them become Christians, and the church continues to grow. And so now you've got all these people who are in this brand new movement and community, and they stay in Jerusalem, and they're trying to survive. And here's the language of how they survived, chapter 2, verse 42. Listen to this. Chapter 2, verse 42 through 47 of Acts. And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship. We'll come back to that word. To the breaking of bread and the prayers, and all came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles, and all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved. How is it that these early Christians survived this major transition, for many of them, from Jewish belief and an entire culture and family to this newfound faith in Jesus? How'd they survive? They survived because they did it together. I love this word fellowship in verse 42. I don't throw Greek words at you very often, but most of you have heard the word koinonia, which means a commonality or a commonness or a sharing. It's a picture of life together. You see, the reason these early Christians survived spiritually, and in this case physically, is because they did life together. And you get into chapter 3, and Peter and John heal the crippled guy, and they get thrown in jail, they get out of jail, they pray, and there's still continued growth, maybe a year or two later. And listen to this description of the early believers in chapter 4, verse 32. Now the full number of those who believed, I love this, were of one heart and soul. And no one said that any of the things that belonged to him was his own, but they had everything in common. Did you hear that? They were of one heart and one soul. Now I think about the men in the room. If we were to say, it's the men in some sort of relationship, we're like, we are of one heart and one soul. If you said that, I'd probably like snicker and then call you a sissy behind your back, right? That's just not the language that we use, but maybe it ought to be the language that we use. Shouldn't we be of one heart or one soul and one mind in deep relationship with one another? So if Ecclesiastes teaches us that we need deep relationships, here's what the book of Acts teaches us. The church provides them. Isn't that good news? The church, this thing that we need so deeply to survive spiritually, the church was created with the needs that we have in mind. God knew what we would need, and so He gave us the church. And so the question then is, if this is true, if we need deep relationships and the church provides them, what is preventing you from developing high definition relationships with other Christians? What is it? What has prevented you? And maybe there's a spectrum of reasons we might avoid these sorts of relationships. Maybe it's just you acknowledge that you're kind of in and out and you're not really interacting with too many people, and you love church and you love worship, but you don't want to get, it's messy to interact with people, and so maybe you just haven't done it yet. Maybe for some of you, you know the value of it, you want this, but you just feel a little awkward about it. Maybe it's you're afraid of vulnerability. You remember the story of the parable of Jesus, the parable of the sower? The very best seed in the world, the seed of the gospel, here's what the parable teaches us in general. The very best seed in the world will only grow in the right circumstances. It's a fair summary of that, isn't it? The very best seed in the world will only grow in the right circumstances. We could walk through that entire parable, but I think one of the things we learn is this. That gospel seed will only grow when we're in deep relationships with other people. Oh, it may have that initial growth, but it will fizzle out. It'll die if we're not serious about developing the sort of deep relationships that the church is intended to give us, the church is intended to provide for us. So, what's this going to look like for you? For our local members, it's going to look like for you. For those of you who are a long ways from home, it's going to look like for you to go back home and actually seek out some deep, spiritually based relationships with other Christians. How do you get there? I'll give you just a couple of suggestions. Let me say this up front. Again, I'll say it again. We settle, if it's true that we need deep relationships, isn't it something that though we would never settle for a black and white TV in 2026, we settle for base level black and white relationships with other Christians? If you've ever been in a tough spot and you've experienced your brothers and sisters in Christ being there to help you make it through something, you know the value of this. Because at some point, you're going to hit a rough patch. You're going to face some financial challenges. You're going to face some health issues. Your children are going to rebel. Your family situation, your relationships are going to struggle. There's going to be some sort of struggle. And if you don't have these sorts of relationships, your relationship with God is going to suffer. You're going to struggle to survive spiritually if you're not developing these sorts of spiritual relationships. Like I said, we'll settle. We'd never settle for a black and white TV, but we settle for low-level, not very vulnerable relationships with other Christians. Here's the deal. You get in a tough spot, you're not going to care what kind of TV you've got. But it will matter what kind of relationships you have. So how do you get there? A couple of suggestions. Here's the first one. This has got to happen in smaller groups. It is not going to happen in settings like this. It's not natural. There are a rare few people who will be vulnerable in a situation like this. But most of us, this isn't where we've got to get into smaller groups somehow. There's a variety of ways to do that for our local members. If it's true that you need this and the church provides them, we're about ending our cycle of small groups this year, but come August or September, we'll start a new round with new groups. And if you're not in one, and you believe what Scripture says about this, then why aren't you in one? If I could speak slightly boldly, why aren't you in one? Challenge you, come September, get engaged. This is a way to develop deeper relationships that the church was intended to give, because it's not going to happen in settings like this. It has to happen in smaller groups somehow. Secondly, it's going to require some risk. Somebody's going to have to step out of their comfort zone and share their life in a way that other people are not already sharing. Somebody ever come to you and confessed something, and they took that risk and you knew it was a risk, but it then opened the door for you to confess in turn, for you to develop a deeper relationship? Somebody's got to take the risk here. Will it be you? Will you be willing to take the risk to develop a deeper relationship? This takes work. Deep relationships are not easy because we are imperfect human beings. And we are from different age groups and different cultures and different backgrounds. This is going to take work. Are you willing to put in the work? And then naturally, this is going to take transparency, honesty, vulnerability, whatever words you want to use. This is going to take sharing. And sometimes we're not very good at this. So if you're going to have this kind of relationship, a deep HD relationship with other Christians, it's going to take us taking off the mask and being honest with other people about us. And that's not easy. But it's going to take. So what's this going to look like for you? This sometimes is going to require a platform. A couple of years ago, a little over a year and a half ago, I had a friend of mine reach out to me and another friend. He said, "Hey, I've got this group of buddies from college. They were in a club together in college. They were all in Phi Kappa together. So we got this Marco Polo group." And he said to me and my other friend, he said, "What if we started a Marco Polo?" Some of you are like, "What in the world is Marco Polo?" It's basically a video app where you can make videos and talk to each other. And when he suggested this, I remember me and my other buddy were like, "That sounds dumb. Like, that sounds almost kind of sissy. No thanks." In fact, I remember when my mom used to do it with her sister. It sounds like something sisters would do, not friends from college would do. No thanks. But we were trying to be nice, and so we were like, "Okay, fine, we'll do the Marco Polo." And nearly 2 years later, you can see at the top the video that I was making, but then across the bottom all the videos that come out. We share videos and talk to each other 3 or 4 times a day. It annoys my family now. I mean, and here's the crazy thing. There's probably been 8 or 10 just this morning talking about sermons, all the stuff. This has been extremely life-giving to me. It turns out, as much as I don't want to admit it, I needed something like this. And for one of my friends, he's able to talk about ministry struggles, and it's just an opportunity to share life. Now, I don't know what this will look like for you. Maybe it's a Marco Polo with some old college friends. Maybe it's inviting some friends out to breakfast this week and saying, "Hey, I want to do this regularly." Maybe just once a month. Maybe it's sending a text. Maybe it's starting a conversation. Maybe it's reaching out to somebody in this church or your home church, wherever you're from, who you know has difficulty developing these sorts of relationships. Because this is hard for some folks. I get that. So maybe it's for some of you who are a little more outgoing and this is easy for you, and maybe you've already got these. What about the people who don't have these? Are you willing to bring them into your circle or start some new circles to develop these sorts of relationships? So my challenge for you, wherever you're from, whether that's here or somewhere else, is to go start developing some deep HD relationships. We would not settle for a black and white TV in a world with QLED TVs. Why in the world would we settle for relationships that are not transparent, that are not deep, that are not high definition, in a world, the church, where God provides the opportunity for us to have them? Think about it like this as we wrap up. Imagine that this is you, and on the end of that rope is everything that you're struggling with. There's a lot of things that could go on the end of that rope, right? Maybe it's work. Maybe it's financial stuff. Maybe it's temptation. Imagine Satan's on the other end of that rope, and he's trying to put everything on the other end of that rope to pull you down and make you struggle and make you fall. And there are dozens of things that might be on the other end of that rope, whether you're male or female. So here's you on the end of that rope. How's it going to go? You try to face all that stuff by yourself. Oh, you say, "Well, I'm doing okay. I got this." What's the difference between this and 4 or 5 of your friends. Now don't look too closely. It's an AI picture, so I don't know if they have all their arms and legs, whatever. But which is going to go better? This, which is normally how we function, or this? Turns out we need deep relationships, and the good news is God provides them for us in the church. And in an audience this size, I'm thankful for all of the deep relationships that exist because of our relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And that's where this starts. And so if you do not have a relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ, we would love to help you with that. Maybe you want to be baptized today. We'd love to talk with you more about that, or if you're ready to do that right now, that's great. Or maybe you want this and you need some help with it, or you just need the prayers of this church. We would love to help you. We don't have a lot of seats up front, but we can get you over here in a corner. Find a seat up front while together we stand and sing.
As I travel through this pilgrim land, there is a friend who walks with me. Leads me safely through the singing sand. It is the price of Calvary. This would be my